Hi, my name is Elizabeth Tanifum, and I'm a senior health and exercise science major at OU. Obviously, I took Native American music this winter break, and I actually really enjoyed the class, surprisingly. Not that I didn't think I would like it, but I didn't think that I would actually enjoy it this much, and I truly did. That really tied into my paper in which I talked about the struggles that we see in Native youth in school, and one of the reasons that may correlate with that, which is that in our schools, as a non-Native American, in our public schools, we don't teach enough about the cultures of Native Americans in general. We generally just talk about the struggles that they faced, the Trail of Tears, how we forced them out, Thanksgiving, Lewis and Clark, a few Native Americans that stand out, but we don't necessarily talk about the different cultures, different subcultures that make up the Native American identity. So that is what I focused on in my paper. In the first two videos that I posted before this one is a man called Dennis Prager, and I think he has a radio show. He seems to be a Republican, but don't really focus on the left and right side of things, just more focusing on what he's saying. And then the other video is more of a kind of calling out Americans who basically mock the Native American culture by celebrating Thanksgiving and what we think Thanksgiving means, and what many natives, I wouldn't say many, but I'm sure all Native Americans really see Thanksgiving as. So first I want to talk about that, and then we'll kind of get into my paper, because this does tie into my paper. In the video, we see, in the Dennis Prager video with the interview that he was talking with some men, we see him talk about how he understands that we forced and did a lot of bad things to the Native Americans. We forced them out of their land and did a lot of horrible things to the Native Americans, but it was all in the name of building a country, and basically that no country is perfect, and no country has done all things in which no country has done everything good, basically. And that's kind of how he justifies what we did to the Native Americans. And he does make clear, though, by no means is it right. Does he agree with it? Not necessarily. He's not necessarily saying he agrees with it, but he's saying that it was necessary for the come up of America, basically. Which, honestly, when we think of how Native American culture is looked at in the U.S., that's kind of what it is. I mean, till this day, I don't think that I've seen many things in my young life that proves otherwise. We have moved Native Americans to these reservations, ghetto reservations, if you want to call it that. We don't honor them by, we don't really have any national holidays in where we honor the people who first inhabited America. We have holidays such as Thanksgiving and, Christopher Columbus Day, in which those are days that honestly I don't believe should be celebrated, especially Thanksgiving, as you saw in the second video. But we don't truly honor Native Americans. And that is something that I never really had a reason to really think about myself before I took this class. I don't honestly have too many Native American friends, although I did graduate high school from Oklahoma. Not that I'm racist or anything, I just haven't really been around the culture, so to speak. And so when I took this class, I realized how much we truly don't know about the Native American culture and about the subcultures within the Native American cultures, and being able to study the 10 different regions and go within those regions and see the tribes within those regions and see which songs go with which tribes and certain regions, and the dances and the unique stories to each tribe, and unique things that we see across the country or across the continent, North America continent, was a really great experience, and it made me realize how much we've gotten it wrong when it comes to teaching Native American studies in secondary and primary education. And to tie that in with my paper, I think that that is one of the reasons why we see so many Native youth struggling in schools, is because we don't give them enough attention. And I'm not talking about individual, I'm talking about when we're studying Native American history, we don't dive into the different cultures that make up the Native American identity. We more so speak about how I go into my paper and I talk about, how it kind of progresses from an elementary level, a middle school level, and a high school level. And by the time it gets to high school, it's like, look, what we did was wrong. We kicked the Native Americans out of their land, although we did give them an opportunity to basically conform to our identity, assimilate to our identity, and become an American by what, we believe. So, you obviously have missionaries going there and trying to take away their practices and beliefs, change their clothing, just change their identity to an American and live like us, or basically you're going to have to leave. So that's what we call trying to share our land with them. And that is kind of what we focus on in high school, that they were wronged, that we did force them to leave, but that we did build a bond with many different Native American cultures. And that's kind of how Thanksgiving came about. And, there were the bad ones, and, the bad ones we got into, battles with, and a lot of people died. There was a lot of bloodshed. But at the end of the day, we did it for our country. And, here we are, hundreds of years later, and here's America. And we admit now that it's, that what we did was wrong, and that's, about it. And it's really sad to think that we don't dive into the rich history that Native Americans have. It's really sad to think about the fact that, I'm 21 years old and I didn't know there was 10 different regions, when we're talking about Native American history, that there was 10 different regions to study. I didn't know how important music was to the Native American culture. I didn't know anything about throat singing and, the Inuits, and I'm probably messed up that name, sorry, in the Arctic region, or Hamatsa. I think it's in the Northwest coast. And after learning about these things, I've become so interested in the different tribes that we see across the United States, especially being in Oklahoma and, graduating from Lawton Christian. I know that we have Comanches there, and, Comanche, and I think there's a Kiowa, we have some, but I just, those were all names to me. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the failure of properly teaching Native American culture in our secondary and primary education. Tying that in with Native youth, I talk about in my paper that 90% of Native youth across the country attend public schools, and that in the top 7 states with the most Native youth, less than 50% graduate high school. And I think a big part of that, of those horrible statistics, goes with the fact that we don't truly try to understand the Native American culture. I feel like I've said that a million times, but I mean, it is the truth. And from a young age, it's just kind of like, we don't truly get to know these individuals, get to know their backgrounds. We don't give them a platform that they deserve. And there's so much rich history that Native Americans pass on from generation to generation, stuff that we don't have because we were not, the original inhabitants of this country, but Native Americans have, and they pass that on, and they have so much rich history of the land, of the earth, of the animals. And we don't have that. And we don't take the time to get to know that. And I think that truly affects a lot of Native American youth because they don't truly know their identity. We don't take time to focus on it. And we briskly go over Native American struggles and history, and we generally honestly only talk about the war and the strife and, the famine and, the diseases and all. We focus on a lot of negative when it comes to Native American studies and education right now, in public school education, I would feel like. And so I think that has truly affected a lot of the youth. And I think that we could possibly see a rise in graduation rates and in just excelling in excelling as a student among Native Americans if we focused on the good things of the Native American culture, the histories, the stories, everything. And specifically, because this class helped me a lot, music. I think that if this class has taught us, if we start from a young age incorporating Native American studies through music, from a young age all the way to high school, or even maybe just as a basis, they learn the 10 different regions and learn music's associated with those regions and music associated with those tribes. And then as, they get older, we can start specifically talking about stuff and venturing outside of music. I think that would be greatly appreciated among so many Native youth, because that gives them an opportunity to take pride in their identity, to take pride in, I'm from the Comanche, remember, I may be saying that wrong, or, I'm Kiowa, or, I'm Cherokee. And I think that would give them an opportunity to help us, to be honest, because we struggle, I'm not, oops, sorry, my lighting messed up. I'm not a Native American, so no matter how much I study or become an expert on it, I'm never going to know exactly what a Native feels like. Just like, being white, no matter how much I study, if I study, European studies and what it is like to be white, so to speak, I could never truly know because I'm not in those shoes. So you're going to need somebody who has lived that path to show you the way, basically. And I think that if we took more time to do that through music, especially because for me, it definitely helped. And I'm honestly one of the most simple-minded people ever. I think that we could greatly see, I think that we could possibly, but I do honestly feel like that would greatly help Native youth when it comes to schooling, because it honestly just takes one thing to set somebody up for the path of success, just like it takes one thing for somebody to fail. And I think that if we took more time as a country to truly understand the original inhabitants of America, and that is part of our history. It's not just Native American history. That is American history. And we don't take time to know that. We take time to know the 13 colonies, and, we take time to go over every single state, and how it came to form. And we take time to go over the Civil War, and we take time, to go over the Revolutionary War. But we don't take time to go over the people who inhabited the America first. So obviously we can understand, or at least I can understand, why so many youth struggle. So that's basically what my paper is about. I also talk about how I interviewed a couple of my friends and just kind of asked them, so, what do you kind of remember about Native American studies in, high school? And, we basically talked about like Trail of Tears. We talked about Thanksgiving, although, one of my friends, she's a debate major, and she was, she hates Thanksgiving and what it's for. So we talked about that. We talked about Lewis and Clark. We talked about there was a lot of negative. We didn't really go into details about the culture, and that's because honestly, we don't know much. We don't, and we're ignorant. And when we see Native Americans, we think Native American as a whole. I mean, I've even been talking about Native Americans as a whole now, but they're not a whole. They're individuals. They have their own identities. They have their own tribes. They have their own special symbols. They have their own special stories. They have their own unique clothing, unique songs that are associated with their tribes. And we need to take more time to get to know that. And I definitely believe that if we start from a young age, like elementary, and work our way up in high school, we'll be so much more obviously full of knowledge, but it'll allow for better relations between Native Americans, because between non-natives and natives, I don't feel like we have that great of relations. And it's our fault as non-Native Americans, because we don't, we've basically, pushed so many of these tribes that are still left into these horrible ghetto reservations, and yet we're still trying to take away their lands and build a whole bunch of stuff and pollute what is rightfully theirs, outside of all the stuff that we've already taken from them. So it's definitely a struggle, and I hate to see so many kids struggle with who they are themselves just because of their identity that they were born with, that they can't take that away. And nobody should ever be ashamed of their identity. You should take pride in every part of you, no matter if you're, American and you don't know your history, you don't know your background, or if you're African, or if you're, Asian, if you're, Chinese specifically, or, from Saudi Arabia. It doesn't matter wherever you're from. If you're from Georgia, or you're from, California, and you rep that, that's something that you should rep. Nobody should ever be ashamed about who they are. And although I don't feel like that is maybe a struggle, that Native Americans are ashamed, it's more so that they're not heard, and that causes a lot of issues. It all ties into the fact that we need to do better. And if we do better for them, I do believe that they will be able to do better in the education system. So that's basically what my paper is about. Hopefully it wasn't just rambling, because that's honestly what this can turn into. But I had a lot of fun. Definitely watch those 2 videos, because it'll definitely help you out. And I really enjoyed your class this semester.